So now we are talking about the body fluid compartments. So the main body fluid compartments are intracellular and extracellular fluid. So how we divide intracellular fluid from extracellular fluid? They are divided by, as you can see in the picture, by the cell membrane. So in the cells we have intracellular fluid. Outside of the cells we have the extracellular fluid. So inside the cell membrane, intracellular fluid, outside the extracellular fluid. We can also divide it further. So the extracellular fluid can be further divided into the interstitial fluid and plasma. So now, you already know that in order to have different compartments, we need to have something that creates a border between those compartments. In case of the interstitial fluid and plasma, this border is the capillary wall. But what is the capillary? The capillary is the smallest vessel of the body. These tiny vessels that gets the blood from the smallest arteries to the smallest veins. And some of the plasma is generally the fluid of the blood. Some of the plasma filters through the capillary wall and creates the interstitial fluid. But it is all extracellular fluid. So plasma, the fluid of the blood, and interstitial fluid is the extracellular fluid. They have some things that are common, some things that are different. And now, composition, important thing. In the intracellular fluid, the main cation that we have is the potassium. In the extracellular fluid, the main cation that we have is sodium. What else is important? The other thing that has completely different concentrations in those compartments are the proteins. So, generally proteins are created, as you know, in the ribosomes. Ribosomes are obviously inside the cells. So we have high concentrations of the protein in the cell, in the intracellular fluid. Some of these proteins are also exerted outside by the vesicles from the Golgi apparatus, for example. And they are mainly pushed into the blood, into the plasma. So in the plasma we have also relatively high levels of the proteins, but not as high as inside the cells. The interstitial fluid is only the fluid that gets through the walls of the capillaries. You need to know that the proteins are the big particles, and when you have some big particles, it's really hard for them to squeeze through the relatively small holes in the capillary wall. So the fluid can get easily through, but the big particles like the proteins can't. So that's why we have far more of the proteins in the plasma than in the interstitial fluid. Okay. Here you can see it one more time. So the normal human body, 70 kilograms, have about 42 liters of fluid. Most of this fluid is the intracellular fluid, 28 liters. The rest is the extracellular fluid. From this, only 3.5 liters is plasma. Of course, it can change from person to person, but this is generally how most of us has it.